All right, so what we're going to learn about today, and let me share for home virtual students. All right, so you guys should be seeing my screen over here, our Adobe Animate. So Adobe Animate is what we're going to use to create one option for our character scene, because if we were to physically draw and have to animate keyframes for a mouth movement, it would drive you probably more crazy than having to do the timing of that lyric video. So I think I have a pretty good way to do this, that it's pretty quick and pretty accurate also. All right, so I'm going to show you, so the final result here of what we have, basically, we're going to have three layers. We're going to have our audio layer, we're going to have our mouth layer, and we have our picture layer. Adobe Animate, as you can see, is kind of like the combination of maybe Premiere and Illustrator, in that you have a timeline, but you also have drawing and modification tools. All right, so we do see some similarity in kind of the layout, in that we have a timeline on the bottom, you have a toolbar and panels, but your tools in the toolbar will vary a little bit. All right. Say again? You can if you want, but you can use any picture. It really doesn't matter. All right, so what happens in the end here, as you kind of saw in the preview, if I press Control Enter to test my video,
remember to wash your hands.
It's going to loop. All right, hold on.
Remember to wash your hands.
I have the preview. I'm trying to bring. Oh, it's not coming over here.
Remember to wash your hands. Remember to wash your hands.
So it does loop. When I press Control Enter, I have a little rendering preview that popped up on my screen. I was trying to drag over so you can see the magnificent result of this. Let me see if I can do that one more time. I'm going to do Control Enter,
Remember
and
to wash your hands. Remember
there we
to
go.
wash your hands.
So the mouth is
Remember to
not
wash
placed
your
really
hands.
right, but it's moving
Remember
along
to
with the
wash your
audio.
hands.
All right, so that's what we're going to try to create here today. All right, so let's all go to our start menu if you have those files downloaded, and you're going to look for Adobe Animate. All right, which is what I have here. It looks like it has an AN as the icon. All right, so, and that's it there. All right, so when we start off, and I'll kind of get to a new document here just to simulate what you guys I think are going to see on your start window. All right, we have a bunch of presets like we have in most programs, and we're going to use this character animation, which, as we see here, would, because our end result, we want it to be viewed on a screen, and I'm going to use this full HD, which we see has the same frame size as we've been working with on most other projects, that 1920 by 1080. It has a frame rate of 30 frames per second. What's really important about this, especially if we get to some of the buttons and things, the platform type is ActionScript 3.0. You really don't have to change any of that. It's all kind of built into this preset, but I'm just kind of showing you what those settings are. All right, so again, File, New, and Character Animation, Full HD, and Create. All right, now, I think we could have just opened that mouth file. I don't know if we can import that. So I'm going to try to import that file that we made. Actually, then, you know what? We didn't have to make a new file since we had the one that we downloaded. So what we're going to do, sorry to go back a little bit, instead of creating a new document, which we normally do, is we're going to just open up that file that you downloaded from the classroom today, the mouth file. All right, so that was going to be this one here. So actually, and it gives us an option to open and animate, so I can kind of skip a step. All right, so this is what we have. It's our basic mouth pose. All right. What is interesting though about it is if we double click on it, our timeline, you'll see changes where it has all these different poses kind of built into it. So we can scan through, and this is, I know we talked about in Premiere, things being nested or kind of existing within another one. That's what's going to allow us to have the mouth move from one frame really. So I can go back to scene 1 and I just have my mouth here. All right. All right, so that's our first layer. I mean, it probably would be a good idea to rename this as we get to have more and more layers. Oh, why can't I right click and just rename? There we go. If I double click, I could rename this layer to mouth. All right. So it's on your timeline down like where it said layer 1. You can just double click it and rename it to mouth. All right, then what we want to do is bring in our picture and our audio file. So to do that, I'm going to say File, Import to Library. All right, you'll notice that there's Import to Stage also. That whole white area there in the middle, like the constraints or the edge of your document, that's called the stage in Animate. All right, now the difference, I always import to the library, because if you place it on the stage and then delete it and you want it again, you have to import it again. If you import it to the library, then it's always going to be in your library, and if you deleted it from your stage, then you just have to re-drag it over again. So I started with my picture. All right, I brought in Sonic the Hedgehog, and I want to put that picture on its own layer. So I'm going to go on my timeline to the left of the trash can down there. There's a new layer icon, so I'm going to select that, and I will just call this character, picture, Sonic, whatever you want to do to name it so that as you're looking at your layers you can identify it. You'll also may notice that when I create that layer, there's an empty circle on frame 1. All right, when we're looking at our time, and as opposed to the mouth layer, there's a black circle. So anytime you have an empty circle, it means that there's basically an empty keyframe or there's nothing really in that layer. And watch, as soon as I drag my picture over with that layer selected, now that circle turns to black. So that indicates that there is some artwork in that layer. All right, so again, I made a new layer, I named it, and then I dragged my image into that layer. And now I'm going to scale it down because it's really big. I'm going to zoom out first, Control minus. If you don't see these corners on the end, you just have to change your tool. So you may be on the selection tool, right? If I have the selection tool and choose my picture, I can't resize it. So I have to go 2 tools down, this free transform, and now I can make this picture smaller. Well, when you import it to your library, it's going to be in the library panel. You should see it in the list, and then you had to make the new layer and drag it onto that. All right, so
it won't let me drag the picture onto the new layer for some reason.
Do you have the layer selected?
Yes.
You're dragging it from your library, Julia? Like the
yes.
little icon?
Yes.
I'm not sure. That's hard to imagine what's happening there. All right, I'm going to pause the recording here. Okay, so just a point of emphasis. If you're not dragging to the right place, then it's not going to work right. So if I was to try to just drag this image down to the timeline, it doesn't allow us to do it. We have to make sure that it's dragged onto the stage. All right, so that's definitely important to be aware of. All right, and then also remember your...
Not sharing your screen anymore.
Nope, actually I think I'm sharing the wrong screen still. I want this one. All right, so you definitely want to make sure you're dragging to the stage and not the timeline. And also remember your layer ordering. So right now I don't see the mouth. I have to drag it up 1 layer. Now it's on top. All right, so we want to fit the mouth to be kind of in position. I'm going to zoom in so I can see it a little bit better. For your character scenes, you would probably want to have like your mouth like kind of not being there on your actual character. so that when the mouth moves, you don't have the old one kind of there in its place. All right, so I'm just going to try to fit this to make it like be relatively the same size as what's in the picture. It's not super important. All right, so now the mouth is in there. So we have the picture, we have the mouth that's going to move. Now we need our audio. So we're going to do the same thing there that we did with our picture. We're going to say File, Import to Library, and I have to go and find that audio file. I didn't re-download it, so I got to go to my folders, animation, mouth animation, and wash your hands. All right. So it's in our library. We're going to now make another layer. I always make new layers so that things can be hidden if we need to, or sometimes if we're animating things, then it will animate independently. All right, so I made a layer, I called it audio, and now I'm going to drag over this WAV file to my stage the same way I did with the picture. All right. Now we drag it over, and in our timeline, you probably can't really see it, but there's a little, the audio is only existing in the first frame. So kind of like what we did in After Effects to extend the timeline, I'm going to click on where it says 2 seconds. So I look at my timeline, and I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say Insert Frame. So what that allows us to do is kind of create some more space, and now our audio We'll fill that in. All right. Now, what happened though? Our picture and our mouth disappeared after a frame. Why? Why did it disappear?
Because they only last for one frame.
Yeah, they only last.
One question.
Yep.
Say I wanted to like draw over this character to remove his actual mouth. How would I do that? How would it work?
You have to kind of convert the image and.
Oh wait, it's working. Never mind. Alright.
Is it though, really?
Wait, huh? Wait. What? Wait, never mind, I guess not.
I'll show you how when we're done. All right. All right. So to get our mouth and our character to be visible during the whole time, we're going to kind of do the same thing we did with our audio. We're going to select those frames and just right-click and say Insert Frame. All right. So now everything is there. It's overlapping. It kind of appears that the mouth is synchronized to the audio, but it's really not. It's just basically going through that mini timeline that we saw before and showing each frame. All right, so does anybody need help getting up to this point?
There's a one question.
Yeah.
How do you make
All right, so now we need to get the mouth to kind of synchronize with the audio. So what we're going to do, and I would definitely watch me going through this. The other stuff is not too complicated. This is a little tricky. All right, so we're going to select our mouth, and then in our properties panel, we have some options here. So it says looping. We don't want that mouth layer or those different frames to loop. We want to select single frame. So what that means is that it's only going to show one frame at a time. So right now, and actually I'm going to turn off my audio, I think. Is there a way to do that? I'll just turn down my audio because we're going to hear that otherwise all the time. Or can I hide it? Will that work? Yes. All right. So now I don't have to hear that all through. All right, so if I select my mouth again and then go into properties, I'm going to first change my looping option to single frame. So it's only going to show one frame at a time. All right, but now we want to go in there and we want to be able to do what's called frame picking so that we can choose which pose is seen at each time. So again, with the mouth selected, I'm going to say, actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to do lip syncing. We could do use frame picker, and what that would allow us to do is manually pick which pose here is being used when because it's recognizing sound that's heard in the audio. All right, that works, but it's going to take some time. What works quicker is going in here. So again, we chose the mouth, we did looping option single frame, and now we're going to pick lip syncing.
Wait, what? I have all of it in my coverage.
All right, so now when this lip syncing option comes up here, we basically have to assign the different poses to the sounds that it would make. All right, I found this out this morning. I kind of threw me off. So the neutral pose, we want to have, where is it here? All right, so for each one of these boxes that are in here, we have to choose the pose that we want to have. So neutral, I think, should be like number 5. All right, the A sounds. And what it shows you here is like these are different poses. If you look at the labels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up through 10. And then after the label is the sound that it kind of represents. So up here, we're trying to match an ah sound. So I'm going to go to frame 3. For the D sound, I'm going to go and see if there's one that's labeled with a D, which I don't, but if you kind of mouth the letter D, the mouth is kind of closed. So I'm going to call that one 9. The E sound, I think, would be frame 3. F, they have an F at frame 8. L is frame 6. M is frame 5. The O sound is frame 2. R is, what did we say for that one? We feel silly doing this because you have to sit there and make sounds and think about what your lips and your mouth look like, but that gets it done. The S will be frame 9. I think would be 2, 4, you think? All right, they're similar. And the woo sound would be, I think, like a 2, yeah. So now that we assigned all those and it says sync with audio.
Those right there for a second so I can copy it over.
I don't know. Well, all right, yeah, you can try to. But, I mean, it's practice at this point. You're just basically assigning each of these, as they're called, visemes. And this is something that we're going to see in Character Animator also. All right, it's kind of like a pose is another word for a viseme. All right, we will say done. And now if you look, it's going to process that whole mouth layer. Look, it created all those keyframes. And now let's see how well it did synchronizing it.
Remember to wash your hands.
That's not bad, right?
Remember to wash your hands.
So you could have a 30-minute audio clip in there, and it's going to now recognize all those sounds and apply the mouth movements. How cool is that? Right? We don't have to synchronize all those frames. All right? And that would be the process. So if you're drawing a character for your character scene, you can make mouth poses, and I can show you how to label them, or just use this pre-made one and put it on top of it, just like we did here. All right? When we're done, as we are kind of here today, we're going to say File, Export, Video, and by default it's an MOV file, but if we check off Convert Video in Media Encoder, we can press Export, and it's going to export it now. I don't know where I sent it though, that's the only problem. Actually, where is our Media Encoder should pop up and do the final processing of this. Yep. All right, so this comes up, and just like we would for any of our videos, actually I'm going to delete some of these previous ones. This should be the last one here. I'm going to process that through. I can click on my link, and now I have an MP4 file which has rendered.
Remember to wash your hands. Remember to wash your hands.
Listen to Sonic. All right, and that would be, you know, as the compositor gets to work on your character scene, that's really all you're going to have to do. Take your artwork for the background, take your audio clip that your voice actor is going to record, put them in here and animate, and then kind of sync up your mouth poses. All right, I know that I'm kind of moving quickly. I want to kind of just talk about this last thing today, which would be So that's the whole part in Adobe Animate if you're kind of going to do a lip syncing of your character. Your other option for your character scene is to use this program called Character Animator. All right. When we start off in the program, it gives us the option of some pre-made, as they're called, puppets. When we hover over them, some of them are not really customizable. This one here, and if you have the newer version of Animate, there are other characters, and you can make custom characters, but it is definitely more complicated. So what I would recommend is when you start Character Animator, choose the Illustrator option of Chloe here. All right. What it does is it opens up, actually this opened it up right in Illustrator. So what I can do in here is I can change colors of the clothing. I have my swatch library here. And if I just do a file save, it's going to automatically update that in Character Animator. So see how it automatically updated the red sleeve? Then you also notice there's a little window here. This is showing my web camera. So what we do is we look right at the web camera, we set rest pose, and now when I move my head around, the character's moving around. All right? And then, so you would have your dialogue to record for your character scene, and now instead of doing the lip syncing, I can record. Oh, I gotta click over here. Counts us down. Mr. Duza is the coolest teacher in the world. Oh, I wasn't looking straight at the camera. So as I'm recording here, it should be recording my mouth. All right, and we can see it takes our input here. I don't know if it's going to get it because I wasn't looking right at the camera, but let's see when we play back. I didn't have I guess my microphone wasn't configured right. That's the idea though with this. Yes, if you export your animation, please upload to YouTube and put as a link on today. All right, so that's real quick into Character Animator and Animate, two methods of animating your characters for that scene.